They heard your words and they twisted them. They took your honesty and used it against you. They waited for your vulnerability, then stabbed it with judgment. And you kept talking, hoping they'd finally understand, hoping they'd change, hoping they'd grow. But what if I told you the real power was never in what you said, but in what you didn't? Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. You see, there's a dangerous myth we've all been fed, that speaking up is always powerful, that saying more proves our strength, our intelligence, our courage. But here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes your greatest strength is your silence. Sometimes saying nothing is louder than saying everything. Power is preserved in silence. Control is maintained in composure. And peace is born when you zip your mouth. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that glorifies constant communication, loud opinions, and the need to have the last word, silence can seem passive, like surrender, like weakness. But in truth, silence is one of the most powerful strategies you can use. It's not a retreat, it's a stance. It's not the absence of strength, it's the highest form of it. When you master the ability to stay silent, especially in moments of emotional chaos or confrontation, you show a level of control that few people possess. The instinct to speak, to respond, to lash out is hardwired into us. But rising above that instinct is what sets strong people apart from reactive ones. Imagine someone attacks you verbally, spreads lies, tries to provoke you. Everything in you wants to respond. You want to set the record straight, defend your name, prove them wrong. That's natural. But often, the response they want from you is the exact thing you should withhold, because your reaction is their reward. Your words give them more ammunition, more drama, more of your energy to drain. But when you choose silence, you strip them of control. You frustrate their agenda. You confuse them. They don't know what you're thinking. They can't measure the impact they had on you. That uncertainty is powerful. It shifts the control back into your hands. Silence isn't about weakness or being voiceless. It's about valuing your energy too much to waste it on people who don't deserve it. Every time you speak, you're giving away a piece of yourself. You're engaging, you're investing, you're opening the door for someone to enter your mental space. But when you're silent, you guard that door. You protect your thoughts. You maintain your power. It's not that you're ignoring reality. It's that you're choosing not to respond to it in the way they expect. You're not allowing their behavior to control your state of mind. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you choose when and how to do it wisely. It means you pause, evaluate, and then decide if it's even worth your breath. The act of not reacting, of simply sitting with your feelings and letting them settle before you respond, or choosing not to respond at all, is an incredible show of strength. It shows maturity, it shows discipline, and most importantly, it shows that you are not easily manipulated. You don't jump just because someone pushed your buttons. In many situations, silence communicates far more than words ever could. When someone is expecting you to defend yourself and you don't, it sends a clear message: you're not worth my time. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect. When people can't get a rise out of you, when they realize their opinions don't move you, their power over you evaporates. They realize that you're not playing their game. And that realization can be more frustrating for them than any words you could ever say. It also gives you clarity. When you're silent, you're listening not just to others, but to yourself. You give yourself space to reflect, to feel, to think. You begin to understand what's really happening instead of just reacting emotionally. That insight gives you an edge. Most people are too busy talking to ever truly understand what's going on. They miss signals. They miss truth. But silence helps you observe. It helps you notice patterns, motives, manipulation. It gives you the information you need to make better decisions. Silence trains your emotions. It teaches you to hold your composure. When you can stay calm in the face of chaos, you become dangerous in the best way because now you're unpredictable. Now you're composed. Now people don't know what you'll do next. They can't push you around with words because you've made yourself immune to that form of control. You become solid, unshakable. And the beauty of it is people begin to respect that. They may not understand you, but they feel your strength. Your energy becomes more focused. Your presence becomes more commanding, not because you talk more, but because you talk less. You're not reacting emotionally. You're moving strategically. You're choosing your moments. And that, more than anything, is the sign of someone in control of themselves and their future. Not everyone deserves your voice. That's a truth many people learn the hard way. You see, your voice carries your energy, your intention, your time, and your emotional investment. It's not just about what you say, it's about who you give access to your inner world. The moment you start explaining yourself to people who've already decided to misunderstand you, you've lost something valuable. You've handed over your piece to someone who didn't earn the right to hold it. And once they have that piece of you, they know how to use it, not to build you up, but to break you down. You might think it's just a conversation, a debate, a back and forth, but each word you give to someone who doesn't honor you is a withdrawal from your emotional bank. Little by little, you become drained. And they, the ones who manipulate, criticize, or gaslight, they feed off that energy. They live for the moment you lower yourself to their level. They thrive when you explain, defend, or prove, because in those moments, they feel powerful. They feel important. You've just shown them that their opinion has weight in your life. But the truth is, it never did. They only had the power you handed over through your words. There's a certain sacredness to your voice. It reflects your spirit, your wisdom, your growth. It's not for everyone to hear. Just like you wouldn't open the door of your home to every passerby, you shouldn't open the door of your soul to anyone who knocks. Some people knock not to enter with peace, but to vandalize what they find inside. They ask questions not to understand you, but to twist your answers and use them against you. They listen not to learn, but to judge. And the moment you recognize that, you begin to realize how precious your silence really is. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Not because you don't have something to say, but because they're not the ones worth hearing it. Your silence becomes your boundary. It says, you don't get that part of me. You don't get to know what I think, what I feel, what I plan. You don't get to hear the fire in my heart or the wisdom I've earned, because you've shown by your behavior that you wouldn't honor it even if I gave it to you. People often confuse being vocal with being strong, but real strength is knowing when to walk away from conversations that insult your intelligence. Real strength is knowing that some people use dialogue as a trap. They don't want peace. They want control. They don't want understanding. They want dominance. And every time you engage, you're stepping into their arena. You're playing their game by their rules. And they've rigged the outcome. You can't win with someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. You can't make someone respect you by explaining your worth. You live it. You embody it. You walk away with dignity and let your silence echo louder than any speech. There's a freedom that comes when you stop feeling obligated to answer every attack, respond to every insult, or defend every decision. You begin to see clearly who is truly in your corner and who just wants a front row seat to your struggle. You begin to protect your energy like the sacred force it is. And you realize that not everyone who talks to you deserves a reply. Not everyone who challenges you deserves an answer. Some people aren't seeking clarity. They're seeking chaos. And if you're not careful, you'll give them exactly what they want: your focus, your fire, your peace. The truth is, your voice should be used to build, to heal, to guide, to uplift. It should be used in rooms where people listen with respect, not where they wait for you to slip so they can pounce. You owe explanations to very few people, and the list gets smaller the more you grow. What matters most is not how loud you speak, but how wisely you use your voice. Who you share it with, who you open up to, who you trust. with your truth, those decisions shape the quality of your life more than you realize. When you start zipping your mouth around people who misuse your words, your energy starts to return to you. You feel more centered, more focused. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop giving away your light to people who live in the dark. And most importantly, you stop compromising your peace just to be heard by people who never really listened in the first place. Silence exposes true intentions in ways that words never can. When you choose not to speak, when you step back and let others fill the silence, you start to see who they really are. Most people are uncomfortable with quiet because silence removes their ability to manipulate, to mask, to hide behind sweet talk and rehearsed lies. In the absence of your voice, their actions begin to speak louder. Their behaviors reveal themselves. The masks they wear begin to slip, and you, without saying a word, begin to see the truth behind the performance. People often tell on themselves when you just stay quiet. They try to fill the space with explanations, overcompensation, or denial. They stumble over their own narratives. They expose their insecurity by demanding a reaction from you. They reveal their manipulation by trying to bait you into a response. When you're silent, you become a mirror. You force people to look at themselves without distraction. And many don't like what they see. That discomfort leads them to reveal their real motives, their hidden agendas, their fake loyalty. Silence becomes a tool that separates authenticity from performance. In heated situations, silence is your X-ray vision. When people expect you to argue, to shout, to match their energy, and you don't, their frustration grows. They can't figure you out. They can't calculate their next move because you're not playing the game the way they expected. That confusion forces their hand. It pushes them to reveal their real character because the truth is, a person's need to provoke you says more about them than it does about you. And your decision not to engage turns the spotlight onto their intentions. Were they trying to solve something or were they trying to control you? Were they really listening or were they just waiting for their turn to dominate the conversation? Most people don't realize how much they reveal when they talk too much. The more they speak, the more clues they leave. The more they explain, the more inconsistencies emerge. And when you sit in silence, you catch those inconsistencies. You catch the patterns. You notice how their words don't align with their actions. You notice the contradictions in their tone, the way their compliments carry sharp edges, the way their kindness seems conditional. Silence sharpens your instincts. It turns up the volume on your intuition, and suddenly you realize that what they're saying is not what they mean. This awareness is a gift. Because once you see someone's true intentions, you can no longer be manipulated by their charm or their tactics. You start to respond based on what they've shown you, not what they told you. You begin to trust behavior over promises, and you begin to guard yourself with wisdom instead of emotion. Silence protects you long enough to see what was really going on behind the curtain. And that clarity changes everything. It helps you make better decisions. It helps you choose who to let in and who to keep at a distance. It helps you preserve your peace without having to explain yourself. Silence also creates space. It gives you room to observe without interference. When you're not constantly talking or defending yourself, you can actually hear what people are really saying. Not just their words, but their intentions. You pick up on energy. You see who's showing up with love and who's just performing loyalty to stay close. And you begin to move differently, not out of fear, but out of understanding. You stop reacting and start strategizing. You stop opening up just because someone seems friendly. And you start paying attention to consistency, to effort, to truth. It's not about playing mind games or trying to be mysterious. It's about recognizing that silence can be a shield, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you've learned the value of waiting. You've learned that rushing to speak can blind you to what's really happening. But pausing, holding back, listening, That's when the truth comes into focus. You start seeing who only shows up when they need something, who changes when you stop feeding them attention, who gets angry when they can't control your reaction. And each of those realizations helps you reclaim your power. It helps you navigate your relationships with more discernment, more confidence, and more strength than ever before. When you speak less, people begin to value your words more. Silence gives your voice weight. The less often you talk, the more impactful it becomes when you do. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, talking endlessly, oversharing, shouting to be noticed, the one who speaks with restraint stands out. People start to lean in when you speak because they know you don't waste your words. They know that if you've chosen to say something, it carries meaning. You don't speak to fill silence. You speak to deliver truth. And that truth holds power not because of volume, but because of rarity. When you're always talking, you give away too much of yourself. People become familiar with your every thought, every emotion, every plan. There's no mystery, no presence. But when you hold back, when you allow silence to exist between your words, you create space for people to wonder, to respect, to listen. You create an aura of self-restraint and mystery. People begin to see you differently, not as someone desperate to be heard, but as someone confident enough to stay quiet. And that confidence is magnetic. It draws people in. It makes your voice seem more important simply because it isn't always present. The truth is, most people aren't really listening. They're waiting to speak. They're caught up in noise, distracted by their own thoughts, constantly moving from one conversation to the next. But when someone known for silence finally chooses to speak, it breaks that rhythm. It forces people to stop, to focus, to absorb. They want to know what made you break your silence. They want to understand the meaning behind your words. Your silence sets a higher standard for communication. It makes your speech an event, not just background noise. And this power of rare words doesn't just affect how others see you, it affects how you see yourself. When you speak less, you start to listen more, not just to others, but to your own inner voice. You start to measure your words, to think before you respond, to ask yourself whether your contribution is necessary or just noise. You begin to value your thoughts more because you're not giving them away freely. That internal discipline strengthens your character. You become more intentional, more grounded, more self-aware. You learn that not every opinion needs to be shared, not every thought needs to be voiced, and not every situation deserves a response. People notice this shift. They sense that you're not easily influenced, not easily provoked, not someone who speaks without purpose. You become known for your calm energy, your clarity, your ability to hold space without trying to dominate it. Your words become tools, not weapons. You use them to build, not to break. You don't raise your voice to prove a point. You lower it to deliver impact. And in a loud world, that quiet strength is Speaking less also helps you avoid unnecessary problems. Words can be misunderstood, twisted, used against you. The more you talk, the more chances there are for something to be taken the wrong way, for someone to use your own voice to create drama. But when you speak with purpose, when you choose silence as your default and words as your strategy, you protect yourself. You stop inviting confusion. You stop giving others pieces of yourself to manipulate. You become untouchable, not because you're silent out of fear, but because you're silent out of wisdom. There's also a psychological power in saying little. It puts others on edge. People aren't sure where you stand, what you're thinking, or how you feel. And that uncertainty gives you an advantage. They tread more carefully. They respect your boundaries more. They don't assume access to your mind. Your silence forces them to reflect, to question, to earn your trust before expecting your voice. You become a person whose words matter because you made them matter by withholding them, by respecting them, by making them rare in every area of life, relationships, business, leadership. The one who can stay silent holds the advantage. While others argue, react, and over-explain, you stay composed. While others chase attention through noise, you command it through presence. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be constant to be remembered. You don't need to speak often to speak powerfully. You just need to speak with intention and let your silence do the rest. People will try to pull you into drama because they need an audience, and silence is the one thing that starves their need for attention. They thrive on reaction. They bait you with insults, twisted stories, and subtle jabs because they want you to engage, to validate their chaos. The moment you respond, you give them what they crave: your energy, your time, and your emotional investment. It doesn't even matter what you say. Your participation is their victory. They don't care about resolution. They care about control. And as long as they can get a rise out of you, they believe they own a piece of you. When you choose silence instead, everything shifts. Suddenly, their game collapses. They no longer have a script to follow. They can't feed off your anger, can't twist your words, can't use your response as ammunition. You rob them of the spotlight, and that silence becomes your protection. You don't need to defend yourself when you know who you are. You don't need to correct every rumor or fight every false narrative, because deep down, people watching will notice the difference. They will see the one who remained calm while others burned themselves out, trying to provoke a war that never started. In the absence of your reaction, their intentions become clear to everyone. Drama can't survive in peace. It feeds on chaos. It multiplies in noise. But when you stay quiet, you break the cycle. You refuse to participate in the emotional ping pong match that so many people live for. Your silence becomes an act of rebellion. It says, you don't control me. I decide where my energy goes. That simple refusal to engage is more powerful than the most carefully crafted comeback. It leaves them unsettled, confused, and often desperate, because they're not used to people who refuse to play. In today's world, where conflict is entertainment and gossip spreads faster than truth, it takes real strength to rise above. It takes maturity to recognize that some battles are designed to drain you, not to be won. Not every fight is yours to fight. Not every insult requires a counterattack. Sometimes, the strongest move is to walk away without a word and let the silence speak for itself. People will talk, they always do, but your silence will separate those who are genuinely interested in truth from those who were just looking for something to talk about. And the irony is, the quieter you become in the face of drama, the louder the other person will get. They'll escalate, they'll push harder, they'll try everything to break your calm. But that desperation only exposes their weakness. They reveal how much they depend on your participation to feel significant. The more you refuse to give them what they want, the more they unravel, and you remain unbothered, untouchable, and in full control of your space. People often mistake silence for weakness, but in reality, it's a sign of power. It takes far more strength to bite your tongue than to clap back. Anyone can speak in anger, but only the disciplined can remain still. Your silence tells the world that your peace is not up for negotiation, that no amount of provocation will pull you out of alignment, that your emotional well-being is too valuable to waste on petty drama and people who are addicted to. When you stay silent, you stay in control. You choose your timing, your tone, and your truth. You don't let others dictate the tempo of your life. And most importantly, you protect your focus, because while they're busy trying to stir the pot, you're building, growing, evolving. You're not playing their game because you're too focused on your own mission. Your silence becomes a barrier that drama can't penetrate, and it teaches others how to treat you. They learn that if they come with chaos, they won't get a show. They'll get silence. And that's enough to make many people think twice before trying you again. Every time you refuse to engage in drama, you reclaim a piece of your power. You stay above the mess. You maintain your dignity. And you move through life with a kind of grace that words could never capture, because silence in the right moment isn't just a response, it's a statement. A bold, unshakable statement that says you value your peace more than proving a point. And that kind of power cannot be shaken. In the silence, you become your own best listener. When the world gets too loud, filled with noise, opinions, expectations, and distractions, your voice can get lost in the crowd. But when you deliberately choose to stay quiet, you make space for your own thoughts to rise to the surface. You begin to hear things within yourself that you've ignored for too long. You notice your instincts. You recognize your true feelings. You start to understand what you want, what you fear, what hurts, and what heals. That stillness becomes the bridge between confusion and clarity. Silence is where reflection lives. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to process what's really going on beneath the surface of your daily life. You stop reacting to everything around you and start responding to what's happening within you. You notice patterns you've missed. You connect dots that didn't make sense before. You feel emotions that were buried under constant stimulation. In silence, truth shows up without filters. You stop pretending. You stop escaping. You come face to face with yourself. Not the version of you that the world sees, but the one who actually carries your pain, your dreams, your history, your worth. And that's where transformation begins, because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't heal what you keep ignoring. You can't move forward while you're drowning in external voices telling you how to live. Silence strips all of that away. It puts a mirror in front of you and asks the hard questions. Who are you when no one's watching? What do you believe when no one's telling you what to think? What kind of life do you truly want when the opinions of others are no longer in the room? It's uncomfortable at first. Most people run from silence because they're afraid of what they'll find. They fill their days with noise because the quiet reveals too much. But the ones who lean into it, who sit with it, who dare to face themselves without distraction, those are the ones who grow. They learn to think for themselves. They learn to validate their own worth. They develop inner strength that doesn't rely on outside approval, and that strength makes them unshakable. Because once you're grounded in who you are, no one else's voice can define you anymore. The world trains us to speak before we think, to respond before we reflect, to share before we understand. But real wisdom is born in silence. It's in that pause between what happened and how you react that you find maturity. It's in that breath before speaking that you find clarity. It's in the decision not to explain yourself that you find confidence. Silence becomes your training ground. A place where you build emotional intelligence, a place where you strengthen your ability to choose your battles, protect your peace, and live in alignment with your truth. And the beauty is, the more time you spend in silence, the better you get at listening, not just to yourself, but to others. You begin to hear what people aren't saying. You pick up on tone, on body language, on energy. You understand people more deeply because you're no longer distracted by your own need to be heard. Your quiet presence becomes a safe space for others to be seen, and in return, you build deeper, more authentic connections. But even more than understanding others, silence teaches you to trust yourself. It removes the noise that tells you you're not enough, not smart enough, not capable. It allows you to tune into the quiet confidence that was there all along, that voice that says you already know the answer, that whisper that reminds you of your worth even when the world tries to diminish it. In silence, that voice gets louder, stronger, clearer, and you start to believe it, not because someone else convinced you, but because you finally heard it for yourself. That's the real gift of silence. It brings you back home. It returns you to the core of who you are. It teaches you to slow down, to think deeply, to speak intentionally. It reminds you that your value doesn't come from how loud you are, how fast you respond, or how much you share. It comes from your ability to listen to the one voice that truly matters, your own. And the more you honor that voice in silence, the more powerfully it will guide you through every noise-filled moment of your life. When you zip your mouth, you develop one of the most underestimated superpowers, observation. The less you talk, the more you see. Most people are so busy speaking, reacting, and pushing their opinions that they miss what's happening right in front of them. But when you step back, stay quiet, and simply observe, a whole new world opens up to you. You start to notice patterns in people's behavior, unspoken intentions in their words, and hidden insecurities behind their actions. You realize that not everyone says what they mean and not everyone means what they say. But when you're silent, you give yourself time to figure it out. You aren't swept away by first impressions or emotional reactions. You see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. Silence trains your intuition. It sharpens your ability to read between the lines, to pick up on energies, body language, tone, and inconsistencies. While others are distracted by their need to be seen and heard, you're quietly studying, processing, and learning. You begin to notice who's genuine and who's fake, who talks too much to cover their insecurity, and who stays quiet because they've mastered themselves, who brags to prove something and who moves in silence because they already know what they're worth. You don't have to guess anymore. You simply watch and the truth reveals itself. Not because you demanded it, but because you created the space for it to unfold. Most people reveal themselves eventually. If you're quiet enough to catch it, the liar will slip up, the manipulator will overplay their hand, the self-centered person will show their colors when things don't go their way, the opportunist will change when they think you can no longer benefit them. These things are easy to miss when you're always filling the silence with your own voice. But when you're still, you start to see everything with stunning clarity. Silence gives you the advantage of time to understand what's really happening before you respond, time to decide who deserves your trust, and time to observe before you invest. And this observational power goes beyond just protecting yourself. It helps you position yourself in life more effectively. You start to recognize opportunities others overlook. You catch details that others are too distracted to see. You can read the room in a way that makes you more adaptable, more strategic, more prepared. You know when to move, when to pause, when to speak, and when to stay silent because you've trained yourself to be present, to absorb, to analyze without the need to always insert yourself into every moment. You become a student of life, constantly learning, constantly refining your understanding of the people and the world around you. Observation also builds patience. You stop rushing into things. You stop reacting impulsively. You start seeing the long game. And in the long game, the ones who win aren't always the loudest. They're the most aware. They understand timing. They understand people. They understand energy. And they understand the value of silence. Observation makes you wise, not just smart. It gives you foresight, the ability to predict how things will unfold, not because you're psychic, but because you've seen the patterns before. You know what happens when people are in pain, when they're hungry for attention, when they're masking their fear with arrogance. You learn to move with intention because you've taken the time to watch, listen, and understand. When you practice the art of silent observation, you also protect your energy. You don't waste time on people who show you red flags in the first 5 minutes. You don't get caught up in the hype. You don't fall for every story, every pitch, every performance. You simply sit back and wait for the truth to emerge, and it always does. People always reveal who they are. The question is, were you paying attention? If you're constantly talking, you miss it. But if you're silent, you catch everything. You see the truth in a world full of noise. You become someone who doesn't just hear words, you understand the meaning behind them. And that ability makes you powerful, not because you're loud, but because you're deeply aware. And awareness is the edge most people never develop because they were too busy trying to be heard to ever truly listen. There's a unique kind of discipline that comes with choosing not to reveal your every move. And in that quiet self-restraint, you gain something rare in this world, mystery. When people don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, or how you're moving, they can't prepare for you. They can't sabotage you, copy you, or compete with something they can't see. You take away their power to anticipate, to interfere, and even to steal your ideas. Because the truth is, the more you talk about what you're doing, the more you open the door for doubt, distraction, and unnecessary opinions that dilute your vision before it's even fully formed. People love to poke holes in dreams, not because they're smarter or more insightful, but because tearing something down is easier than building something great. By zipping your mouth, you protect the incubation stage of your ideas, that sacred phase where things are still delicate, evolving, and vulnerable. You give your plans room to grow without judgment. You keep your energy focused, not scattered. You keep your intentions clean, unpolluted by other people's fears or projections. It's in that silence that your vision gains strength. You no longer feel the need to prove what you're doing to anyone. You're not performing for validation or waiting for someone else's approval. You're moving because it matters to you, not because you need applause. And that internal motivation is what keeps you consistent, even when no one's watching. When you stay quiet, you become unpredictable. And that unpredictability is power. It makes people uncomfortable because they can't categorize you, can't figure you out, can't map out your next steps. And while they're busy wondering, you're executing. While they're talking, you're creating. While they're trying to guess your strategy, you're already 3 moves ahead. There's no press conference, no announcement, no need to declare your journey, just action. Quiet, focused, relentless action that speaks volumes without ever having to say a word. People often confuse silence with inaction, but that's only because they haven't learned the difference between noise and progress. Just because you're not broadcasting your every move doesn't mean you're not making moves. In fact, the most dangerous person in the room is the one who says the least and watches the most. The one who builds in silence, sharpens their skills behind the scenes, and lets results do the talking. Because at the end of the day, your success will make the noise for you. Your growth, your transformation, your wins, those will speak far louder than any explanation or defense you could ever give. And here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access to your plans. Not everyone has your best interest at heart. Some people smile in your face but hope you fall. Others will cheer for you until you start doing better than them. That's why protecting your vision is not just wise, it's necessary. You can't expect everyone to understand your journey when it wasn't assigned to them. You can't expect people to support your dreams when they're too afraid to chase their own. Some people will try to limit you simply because your ambition exposes their comfort. And if you talk too much, you give them the ammunition they need to shoot down what they can't comprehend. But when you move in silence, you control the narrative. You stay grounded, you stay humble, you keep your peace intact because you're not exhausting yourself trying to convince anyone of anything. You let your progress be the proof. You let your results speak so loud that even your critics have no choice but to respect you. And if they don't, that's fine too, because your path is not about them. It's about honoring the vision that was placed inside you. It's about becoming who you were meant to be, not who they expect you to be. And the more you practice the discipline of silence, the more powerful your life becomes, because nothing is more dangerous than a focused mind, a closed mouth, and a determined spirit moving through the world with intention and purpose, unbothered by the noise